Tansei, welcome to Métis Minute, your source for Métis news in Region 7. Since it's election season at the Métis Nation of Ontario, this month we are excited to be bringing you some stories about those who are running in the PCMNO election. The Provincial Council of the Métis Nation of Ontario is an elected body of Métis leaders that represent the community. We've invited all candidates who are running in Region 7 to be a part of our series. We want them to share with you their reasons for running and what issues are important to them. We wanted to make sure you're able to make an informed decision on which candidate best represents you, so you can be confident when you cast your vote. Today, we are bringing you an interview with Region 7 Councilor candidate Jordyn Playne. Jordyn currently serves as the president of the Métis Nation of Ontario Youth Council and the youth representative on the PCMNO. We interviewed Jordyn about her reasons for running and how she'll best represent you. All right. So thank you for being here, Jordyn. I know who you are because you've done the podcast and everything before, but for some citizens in Region 7 who might not know you, if you want to just explain who you are, where you come from, and what your current role is.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, Sam. So for, I guess, people who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name's Jordyn Playne. In community, I'm also known by Jordy. I kind of go by either one. There's this old saying, call me whatever you want, just don't call me late for dinner. And I truthfully believe that. Call me Jordy or Jordyn, I'll respond to both. But I'm a really proud citizen of the Métis Nation of Ontario, and I've been born and raised in Penetanguishene. I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Marguerite Desaume, of the Desaume-Claremont family line, and the great-great-granddaughter of Philippe Marchand, the granddaughter of Elva Marchand, and the daughter of Al Playne, who are all citizens of the Métis Nation of Ontario. Yeah, I guess a little bit about me is, like I said, I was born and raised here in Penetang, and I still get the pleasure of working, playing, and living in Penetang. Myself and my husband, just before COVID, were able to successfully purchase our first home together in my home community, which I truly think is an honor as a young person to be able to purchase a home, let alone to be able to purchase a home in the community that my family has always existed in since landing here in Penetanguishene. I am a registered social worker. I work in a forensic psychiatric hospital known as Waypoint Center for Mental Health here in the community, where I primarily work with Indigenous and Francophone clients and therapists, which is one of the best parts of my day, is being able to support folks interacting with a lot of our community members. And I'm also get the pleasure of being the youth representative on the Provincial Council of the Métis Nation of Ontario, which allows me to also be the president of the Métis Nation of Ontario Youth Council, which both of those titles I've now held for just shy of 4 years, which feels like a lifetime ago, but it also feels like it has flown by. But I've been on the Métis Nation of Ontario Youth Council actually for 8 years as an elected leader, both in the role as president and actually as the representative for Region 7 on the Youth Council many moons ago. But it's most certainly wasn't my first interaction with the MNO. I've kind of been around the Métis world for about 11 years. I'm actually headed this summer, headed into my 11th assembly, which seems wild to be able to count all of the different places that I've been in space with for these assemblies, going all the way back to Thunder Bay as my very first annual General Assembly. And I think it was maybe 2015 or 2016, if I'm doing my math correctly. But it's been a journey since I first started hanging out with this crazy community, and couldn't imagine existing in any other space.
Yeah, and you talked about 8 years. That is a long time to be involved in Métis politics. And obviously, we're going into like an interesting time for Métis people in Ontario right now. So maybe if you want to go back to what made you decide to get into Métis politics and
Yeah.
why you're continuing to want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I guess politics, Métis politics in particular. At first, when I started to hang out and I started joining the M&O stuff because I got actually a job through the summer, what was the summer youth cultural program back then. And I was able to watch people like Mitch Case on the youth council. And I was really inspired by the changes that he was making from like a internal systems level. And so I was really inspired by that. And through kind of it, being in the M&O community, eventually an election came up, and I thought, I love making micro, macro, and meso level change. I've always been taught if you want to be able to change a system, you have to be in the system and throw pebbles from within sometimes. And so through that, I decided to throw my hat in the ring for an MNOIC position. Like I said, 8 years ago. And actually, I wasn't acclaimed on that position. I had to run a full election, my very first time running anything to do with Métis politics. I spent about a month and a half campaigning and successfully won, not by that many votes, but I successfully won as the Region 7 youth representative. And during that time, I was able, with the council, we were able to secure over $100,000 through the Trillium Grant Foundation, where we were able to kind of like launch this province-wide initiative, which was a huge success and still heavily influences the youth council today. So that's why I guess I first got into Métis politics, but maybe I can talk a little bit about why I decided this time around to put my name forward. About 2 years ago, halfway through my term, I started to think about what was next. This was just on the kind of early stages of talking about Bill C-53, the development of and all of that. And I started to think a lot about not myself, but the future generations to come and how self-government will largely have an impact, yes, on myself as a young person, but also on my kids, my grandkids, my great-great-grandkids. Self-government will largely impact them. And so 2 years ago, I kind of had the thought of, you know what, I want to do this for myself, for my community, and so that my kids and my grandkids and the generations to come have a space to exist in, because the Métis Nation of Ontario has become a home to me. I've met friends and family and people who are my distant cousins, and it's just been the best place to exist in and really been the second home that I never knew I needed, but I'm so glad I found. And with that and the will of the community, I was approached several times over the past couple of years to ask if I would run in the upcoming election, because they saw, I think, my dedication, my passion, my knowledge, and my experience in some of these political spaces, and they want that in leadership for Region 7. One of the big things I talk a lot about in my campaign is like new leadership for a new era, because this is a new era that we're venturing into for Métis leadership and for the Métis community. And we need fresh perspectives, but also a perspective that has knowledge, the intricate knowledge of those systems. I've existed in the systems of PCMNO for 4 years. I know what's happening. It's kind of I'll hit the ground running with some of that stuff if I get elected, because I've already been doing it for 4 years now.
Yeah, and you talked about, yeah, you're the only candidate running for Region 7 councillor that is currently holds a position in the PCMNO. So yeah, maybe if you want to talk about how your position as youth council president has prepared you for the Region 7 councillor role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because the role as a youth representative on the PCMNO, I think a lot of times people can look at it and just go, that's just a youth. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't have life experience. She needs to learn from other people. She's new, she's young. These are all things that people have actually said to me. And I'm very proud that my dad raised a very fierce and driven young Métis woman, because the more people challenged me existing on the PCMNO and me existing in the spaces, the more I was able to prove them wrong. Is that the past 4 years on PCMNO, I have brought forward and moved and seconded more motions than I can count. I've been at more microphones at assemblies, more town halls than I could even imagine, been in more community spaces because young people deserve a voice at the table. We are not the leaders of tomorrow. We are the leaders right now. We are moving and shaking and leading the charge. When I think about what's happening with the Bill C-53, I reflect on those days where myself and Hayden Stenlin, Autumn Lang-LaRose from out west, we were able to share our perspectives of how the bill was going to largely impact young people. And we heard from members of parliament that those are the conversations they're going to remember, because it was such a unique experience to have young people bringing forth their opinions and understanding of how this massive government legislation can impact us and how it has impacted us. So I think, I guess to sum up your question, the past 4 years have undoubtedly given me the knowledge and experience to go into this new era of leadership in the Métis Nation as we move into self-government, as we move into constitution building. Those are two things I think people forget, that they go hand in hand. There's a clause in our bill that essentially means that we can't move forward on a lot of the self-government acts without having a constitution. Alberta has one. We do not. And so I am a huge believer in not just talking about like what is a constitution for our people, but giving our people something to read so they can tell us exactly what they hate about it. I don't believe in just like giving people like, this is a theory. Let's give them something to dig their teeth in so they can tell us. And that comes from sitting at tables with people like my uncles, my community members, our elders in community. That's what they want. And I'm a big believer. In the past 4 years, I've really demonstrated that I take my leadership from the community. I don't sit at these tables as Jordyn Playne, the member of PCMNO. I sit at these tables representing I currently represent nearly 5,000 young people, and I carry their voices on my shoulders every day in those spaces because they inform how I talk. They inform how I move through those spaces. And if elected, I intend to do the same thing. Every voice in Region 7 will be demonstrated at that table because they inform how I move and act in every space.
Yeah, and speaking of representing the community, you're also a community member. You live in Region 7 too, as do all the candidates. But what are some of the biggest issues you see, either from your own personal perspective or just going around, like you said, going to these events and talking to people? What are some of the issues that Region 7 is facing?
Through dialogue with community members, I can wholeheartedly say there's 3 kind of common themes that come up: education, housing, and food security. Those are the 3 things that I think, particularly in the times that we exist in right now, if either you yourself can't relate to any of those, you know someone who can, who is struggling in any of those domains. And because those 3 issues are so large, they require a lot of time and understanding of what can we do as a community to address them. And I believe self-government is the way. When we have the opportunity to dictate how our funds are spent, how we allocate things, how we can engage in those types of conversations, self-government will help us look at housing, will help us look at food security. It'll help us look at how we educate people from all levels, right? From our itty bitties, our ELCC folks, all the way up to infinity, because we know education isn't just something that stops when you graduate high school or if you have the opportunity to go to post-secondary school. Education affects every single person. And so all 3 of those together are the key pieces, I think, to what I'm hearing from community members. Also, I guess, just having their voice heard. A lot of people haven't had the ability to sit down and have coffee with some of our leadership and just say, I just want to tell you some stories and I just want to tell you what I want. And one of my favorite things I think about, one of my supports that I'm getting, Cherie Demeline, just wrote me a beautiful letter of endorsement where she said, Jordyn can play euchre with you and she'll listen to your stories. And euchre is like the biggest quintessential like Métis game in Region 7. And that's what I believe in, like sitting down with our citizens, having some tea, playing euchre, whatever it is, and listening to what they need so I can find the resources to help address it.
Yeah, and so for Region 7, one of the recent issues that I'm sure will be moving forward after the election is there has been some recent boundary changes with Barrie and Georgian Bay.
Yeah.
And then now that Moon River's suspended, there might be some changes in boundaries up there too.
Mhm.
So how are you going to make sure that citizens who either want to engage in their councils or have access to these services,
Mhm.
if their council is either moved a distance from them, like how do you assure
Mhm.
that Region 7 as a whole, all citizens are able to access or be involved in politics, like you said? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, Region 7, it's the largest concentration of Métis people in Ontario, and we only have 4 wonderful community councils, but that doesn't capture everyone, right? There's people who live on those bordering towns, things like that. I think the border issue is something that has been very loud and clear from, I think, particularly Barrie citizens. It's been flagged to me early on in my pursuit for this, that this is a conversation that needs to come back to the table, because the displeasure of not just Barrie citizens, those affected, I think, if I'm not wrong, there's quite a few families that have been largely affected.
hmm.
And what I can assure all folks is that that will be a conversation that comes back to the table near immediately after election for myself, with the intent of bringing those families to the table. I'm a social worker. I bring human and humanity into everything I do. And I think a lot of times in politics or leadership positions, we forget that we're doing the work for the people. And so I can't make decisions on what boundaries look like without talking to the very people it affects. And so having those people tell me what they want allows me to go to tables and advocate. If they want to be part of Barrie, well, then I'm going to try my darndest to advocate for that and see what I can do from a regional councillor position to ensure that their voices are heard, validated, and uplifted in those spaces. So that's what I hope to do around that issue. I can't speak to anything around the Moon River concerns as of right now, but I can let folks know. I've heard a lot of citizens say, like, with the current charter concerns, they feel like they're not able to access community and not able to interact in different spaces. And so because of that, I'm listening to citizens, and I'm actually going out to Parry Sound on April 13th from 10 to 11:30 in the morning at the Foley Community Center, where I'm just going to sit and hold space. Anyone can drop in. I'm going to have tea and coffee and muffins, and anyone can stop in to chat with me, because I want to hear what it is that the citizens want. Again, when that conversation comes back around their charter, I want to be able to know what do the citizens want, so I can bring that voice forward. It ultimately, I think, comes down to, I don't act as Jordyn Playne, as I said earlier. I act as the democratically elected person, hopefully, to represent Region 7, which means I take that directive from the people. I am accountable and I am transparent, and I have a long track record of both of those things. And if I am ever not being those things, I appreciate, or would appreciate, when people call me out, because then it pushes me to do my job better.
Yeah, and speaking of community involvement, you talked about Bill C-53 a bit earlier. That clearly is an issue that's going to be long drawn out through the future. So how will you make sure that citizens are made more knowledgeable about our self-government? And do you think it's important that there is more citizen involvement in the process for self-government?
Yeah, I think what the Métis Nation of Ontario has done really well is, when we were having troubles getting it to the floor for some of the first readings, the second readings, or when it was at the subsequent INAN committee, is we rallied the troops in community to send letters to our MPs, our MPPs, to be able to make sure that that happens. And it was this awesome view of, like, solidarity, I think, amongst Ontario Métis people. And so to ensure that more people know what's happening around the bill, particularly, I want to host monthly town halls. I want to have newsletters. I want to connect with citizens that just aren't on social media. I mean, I know this. My dad's, he may not want me to disclose his age, but he is well into his 70s, and not everyone uses social media. And I think that's something that we as a community sometimes rely on, is just posting something on a Facebook page and hoping it gets out there. But through my one-on-one email connections with folks, I'm finding that they don't enjoy that. They want to be able to get emails to find out what's happening in community. What is self-government? What's the self-government team doing? And so it's my responsibility if I'm elected to share that knowledge. So I mean, just the other day I was talking with some community folks around like some sort of like community agenda. Maybe the self-government team will come into Region 7 and talk to us about what that looks like. What do we need to get to self-government? What does it mean if the bill is passed? All of these different things to be able to share in multiple spaces. So I would love to see like a community calendar. When are food hamper days for community members? When are social events, beading circles, all of these things, right? That is political. Métis people existing is political in whatever sense that means. And so if I can share that knowledge in my role, I think I'm doing it well if I'm able to do that.
Yeah, and so why is it important for people to participate in this particular PCMNO election?
Yeah, I think it's so fundamentally important to, first of all, exercise your right to vote. As one of the candidates, I want to be able to earn people's ability to vote. I don't want someone to vote for me because they know my name. I want them to vote for me because I've earned their trust, which is so important, and because I've demonstrated with care and compassion that I am a person of my word. And so I think it's important people get out and vote because the next 4 years are so important for Métis people. We are staring down self-government. We are looking at constitution building, and Region 7 has to play a key and vital role in those conversations. And we need a leader and leadership that can help uplift that voice, that works with all community councils, that works with all citizens, that does not prioritize their friends or family over anyone, that they make sure that the needs of our community and citizens are met. And so if I can do that, I think that would be a good job. And that's why I think people should vote in the upcoming election. It's so important our voice is heard, and to have leadership that can bring us into that next era, I think is really important.
I saw the young people, the youth, the PCMNO youth president voice. But that we were talking about earlier, youth can also vote in the youth council and for the regular Region 7 council.
Yeah.
So youth should come out and vote.
Yes, yeah, good catch on that. I'm so used to kind of like that young person perspective because I am a young person. This is a lived reality for me. So I think not just everyone, but also our young people have the ability to change the election, right? Because I think if 5,000 young people showed up to vote and cast their ballot on election month, I guess, it could really sway a lot of the outcomes of these elections. And so to remember that we exist in these spaces not for ourselves, it is quite literally for the future generations, and we have that closest connection. The PCMNO, it shouldn't be a place people go when they're retired because they decided they wanted to give back to their community. It's a space for people to want to advocate for a long time. And so that's what I hope, is that the PCMNO is representative of young people, not just in youth designated spots as well.
And yeah, you're going to be at the all candidates meeting later this month. But until then, if there's anything that you want to say to voters or any last words.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone ever wants to connect with me, please do so by emailing connect@Jordyn4 region7 .ca, or give me a call at 705-529-3130. Give me a call, shoot me a text. I'm always available to connect with our citizens now and if I'm elected.
We'd like to thank Jordyn for taking the time to talk to us today. Jordyn will be at the All Candidates meeting in Alcona on March 13th. To learn more about Jordyn and her campaign, you can visit www.Jordyn4region7.ca. To learn more about how you can vote in this year's PCMNO election, you can go back through our Métis Minute playlist and watch the episode on the PCMNO election. Merci for watching, and we'll see you down the river.